So hello, my name is Martha Munoz, and I will be sharing with you information on the Indiana dyslexia law. It's going to be very brief, and I hope that it will be very beneficial to all of you. So here we see the Hutchins Dyslexia Screening Bill that was signed into law. This isn't just another name for the Indiana dyslexia law that we are going to be discussing today. And so we see that it was signed into law April 24th, 2018, and it gives us the definition of dyslexia. So dyslexia is categorized as a specific learning disability related to reading. Students who have dyslexia and related conditions will struggle to identify and match letter sounds with letters, have difficulty with phonics, and will struggle to read. It affects reading, writing, spelling, and comprehension. These students are typically very bright and can excel with the right interventions. Without an intervention, these students could unnecessarily face a lifelong struggle with reading. Hutchins said, though dyslexia is inherited and cannot be cured, this law will ensure we are giving our students the best possible chance to succeed. Here are some of the objectives for today. We have a brief overview of the code 20.35.5, how it affects public schools and non-public schools, and what we can do as Seventh-day Adventist teachers with this law. So here's some important vocabulary that you're going to want to know beforehand. We have codes. Codes are laws arranged by subject. When a law is codified, it is combined with all other laws on the same subject and previous current laws and amendments to the law. We have LEA, which is Local Education Agency. These are school districts and county offices of education. And we also have school corporations, which is a school corporation is a corporation authorized by law. So establish public schools and levy taxes for their maintenance. Here we have child find. Under the federal law called IDEA, public schools must look for and find children with disabilities, even those in private schools. We have universal screener, which is a type of assessment that is administered to every student in a specific classroom. We have IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is a federal law that provides free and appropriate education to children from birth to age 21, identified as having one of the 14 specific disabilities. Here we have the summary of this code. This code includes all of the state requirements for the Indiana Public Schools regarding the screening and identification of children with the characteristic of dyslexia. This code also includes what to do before and after a child is identified as having the characteristics of dyslexia, and the responsibility of the LEA to train teachers to be able to identify and screen children suspected of having characteristics of dyslexia, when to notify legal guardians, and the IDOE. Here we have a photo of our governor, the state of Indiana, with those involved in the creation and signing of the Hutchins Dyslexia Screening Bill. This is just another way to identify the Indiana dyslexia law. We can also see that this law was signed on April 24th, 2018, but the law wasn't implemented until the following school year of 2019, and we still have some public schools that have not implemented it. They've been submitting waivers so that it gives them more time to prepare to implement this bill correctly in their school system. So even though this law has been implemented since 2019 in the public school system, as non-public schools, we are not required by law to screen students in grades K through 2 at this moment. But this does not mean that we are not responsible as teachers, as educators, for identifying our kids. Here we see an important verse that illustrates this. It says, "From everyone to whom much has been given, much will be required. And to whom they entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more." It's important that we understand that identifying these children, giving them these screeners, opens the door for these kids to be identified and given the proper tools they need for state testing. So here we have the document for dyslexia programming guidance for schools, and I will have a link ready for you to be able to access this. And so again, it gives a brief overview of the state law and of the requirements for for the public school system. Obviously, we're not going to apply them in our case, but if we are able to identify them and use the different tools and resources that they have on this document and on the website for the Indiana Department of Education, we are going to be able to quickly refer them to the appropriate LEA and then start the process so that they can be identified and given the proper accommodations or resources that they need. And that way we can also start collecting data to prepare a proper learning plan for them. And so here's a section on school staffing and training. It also talks about the different programs. I'll be showing you as well different programs that you're going to be able to use. Here's the online training course, the Dyslexia Toolkit. That's also very helpful for those of you who have no idea maybe where to start. At the beginning, there was also an email address that you could use to reach out to professionals, and here we have a flow chart that they're using in the public school system to identify or to know when to identify the process, what needs to go next. And here are some of the specific skills that we're going to be talking about in a little bit that you should be on the lookout for, and that some of these online screening tools that you will have at your disposal will be able to help you identify if the student is struggling in that area. So as mentioned before, the Seventh-day Adventist school system is not required to do the screening. But the verse that we just saw lets us know that we have a responsibility. And if we know what we need to do, we are called to put that in action, even if we're not required by state. And I know that some of our schools don't even work with the state to identify children with special needs, and that's a totally different subject that we can talk about later. But if that's the case, and regardless if it's the case or not, you're going to be given a brief overview of the things that you can do that are free that can completely change your students' quality of education, especially if they have even one of these characteristics. Because we know that our schools lack the funding and lack the personnel to be able to have resource rooms. And if you as a teacher are aware of your students' needs and can incorporate this in small group instruction or in afternoon tutoring, you will be giving that student or students the tools that they need to be able to succeed in the future and in the world to come. So here we have Child Find. Child Find is a federal law under the IDEA that requires public school teachers to find and identify students who could benefit from special education resources. And so even though we are not necessarily told specifically that we need to find these children, this is now something that you know and that you need to be proactive about, especially at a young age. And the purpose behind it is that they want to be able to provide the resources needed to these children so that they can function in a general education classroom in the best way possible with all the tools that they need. And even in our schools, if we are able to identify these needs and provide the support that they need, again, it will improve their quality of education and prepare them for higher learning. So I want to take a minute to talk about that. Personally, I've had the experience of coming into the Seventh-day Adventist classroom, into a multi-grade classroom, and having no idea, what things to look for, and it's very overwhelming, and I understand that. But as I worked through different courses, specifically to be able to gain my basic certification through the church, one of the classes that was offered was basically a class for special needs and how to help children with special needs, and that's where the whole REACH program was introduced. And we all have access to that program and that website. Now, if you knew that you could help a child once you see these struggles that the child is having, wouldn't you want to do whatever you can to help them so that later on they're not struggling? So I had no idea what I was looking at when I had students that were struggling, and to the point where I thought that I was going to have to tell their parents, right, that they needed to be moved to a different school that would be able to suit their needs. And right as I was about to make that decision to talk to the parent and talk to our principal, I took this class through Southern and my eyes were blown wide open. And so what I mean is that I was able to see characteristics in my students, more than one, and I was able to put into practice different things that could start to help them. I'm not saying that I had all the tools, because obviously I had only taken a 3 credit class, but I was able to help the parent find the resources that they needed. And by the end of that child's time at our school, the child was flourishing, and it was such a blessing. And then I remembered other students that I had and hearing how they struggled through high school unnecessarily because I didn't know what I was looking for. And so this should just generate a desire and a passion in your heart to be able to know what you're looking for so that you can help these kids and their parents as early as possible. So again, even though the public school is not required to screen children in non-public schools, specifically for dyslexia, according to the Indiana Code 2043, 1-8.5, they are required by law to evaluate a student if an official request is submitted by a non-public school. So what that means is, as soon as you are able to identify this child, you notify the parents, you let them know what is available to them, and then you can start contacting the LEA and they can start in that process. Even if the parents reject the plan, the IEP, or any other services included in the IEP, at least this gives you as the school the power to create your own 504 plan or your own learning plan, and give the child the accommodations they need on state testing. And as most of us are voucher schools, and this is going to apply to voucher schools, you're going to want your child, your student, to have the proper accommodations so that they can do their best on the state test. And those who don't do state testing, it's still good for your student, because on the MAP test, you can also give them the accommodations that they need. So what do you do if you suspect that a student has dyslexia? Okay, so before you administer this universal screener, you notify the parents in your classroom. So let's say you're in a K-2 classroom. So you send out that note, hey, we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z in the classroom. We are going to then send out more communication regarding how your child did. Okay, so if you are teaching grades 3 and up and you see the following characteristics that we're going to be talking about, then it's important. And if you were in the public school system, it would be mandatory for you to do the screening for these specific children. And remember, it's important to notify the guardian. If you were in the public school system and the child is identified, you would need to notify the Department of Education or your local Department of Education, because under this law, they need to collect data of all the students that are identified as having specifically dyslexia. And so, again, with this information, you can proceed to have a meeting with the parents. You can also administer 2 or 3 more tests if you're not sure. And then you can sit down with the parents with this information. Or when you sit down with the parents and explain, then you can give them information about what to do next so that they can solicit a screening from the public school system, and you would end up being that liaison between the family and the school, the public school district. So now what do you do? So again, teachers should notify parents regardless of the results. You should administer additional screeners if deemed necessary after obtaining parental consent, and then discuss results with parents, inform them of their right to have their child evaluated by the LEA. So if parents refuse additional support from the ELA, discuss and develop a specialized learning program for your student and provide parents with additional information on dyslexia. And this is very important. Parents need to be able to understand the learning struggles that their child might have so that they know that their child isn't just being lazy, isn't not wanting to do anything, and just give them the proper resources that they need. And so here we see additional screeners and additional resources that we're going to be going over quickly in the video. And all of these things can be found on the Indiana Department of Education page. There's, like we talked about, professional awareness modules, which I will be showing you in a little bit, dyslexia toolkit, which gives you more detailed information, specifically on how to break down the different areas that the child might be struggling in. It gives you information for your state dyslexia specialist, who to reach out to, and different programs that are approved by the Indiana State Department of Education. And so again, you're going to go to this document, the Dyslexia Programming Guidance for Schools. You're going to scroll down. As you can see, here's the email address for the IDOE's Office of Teaching and Learning. You're going to keep scrolling. Underneath school staffing training, you're going to see online training course, and you're also going to see the dyslexia toolkit. So we want you to click on the online training course. It's going to ask you to create your own username and password, and this is completely free. All right, so once we log in, you're going to be able to see the dyslexia professional awareness. Like I said, it's completely free. It's modules at your own pace, and it just breaks down the basic information that you need, and it helps you to just have the tools so that when you see specific characteristics, you're able to identify the child immediately. If we go back, we're going to go to the dyslexia toolkit, and this is a PDF that has a lot of information, and it's going to give you more detailed information also on the different characteristics that you should be looking for. And again, it's by the Indiana Department of Education. It was updated in January of last year. It gives you a rundown of what the purpose is. It gives you information so that you can reach out to those who wrote it. You can also see the table of contents, and specifically I want you to see the different recommended instructional approaches, resources, the phonological awareness. And so I will be leaving that with you, a link so that you can access that, and it has just information that you can read at your own pace so that you don't feel like you don't have the information, at least the basic information that you need to make the decisions that you need in order to help your student. Here we have, if we scroll all the way down, here is a table giving us approved dyslexia training programs, and you're going to be able to see the organization on the left side, the mode, if it's in person, online, or hybrid. You're going to see how many training hours, and if you were in public school, they're going to expect you to have a specific amount of training hours. Since we are not a public school, you can see which program is either closer to you or would benefit you and your school in your specific situation. And then you have the contact information on the right side. This is another very important resource that you as Seventh-day Adventist teachers have, and it's the REACH. So reaching to education, to educate all children for heaven. And so here you have different links that you can click on to give you modifications and accommodations and just resources on how to help kids starting in kindergarten all the way until high school. You also have professional growth. You have what every teacher should know, what to do in the classroom, and other resources. And so here you have continuing education, academics, different organizations that can help you also. And then here you have plans, EC, elementary. So I'm going to go ahead and click on elementary. And then on the left, remember, we're trying to focus on including these kids in the general education classroom. And because we're talking about dyslexia, I'm going to focus on reading interventions. And so you're going to go ahead and scroll down to that section. And then we're going to see the different accommodations that you're going to be able to do, the document that it's going to give you specifically for this. And so here you have the different characteristics that you might see in a struggling reader. So we're going to want to scroll up top, make sure that you look at the download, the complete REACH resource manual. Because you're going to be able to see all of these strategies broken down. On the right, you can see more information. There you have resources, and some of these resources many of you already use in your classroom thanks to the discount that we get through the NAD. So let's go ahead and click on download the complete REACH resource manual. Again, this isn't only for reading. You're going to see that it has all the different types of struggles kids might have, whether it be educational, academic. It could be behavioral. And so this is going to help you not only with children who are struggling, but just the classroom in general. And it's a good tool to have in your classroom printed and ready to go. Here we can see on page 46 a few of the resources at your disposal. You have the San Diego Quick Assessment or Reading Ability, and you can copy that link for a PDF. You have the Test of Word Reading Efficiency. You also have Words Their Way assessment, which many of you may already be using Words Their Way in your classroom. You have Running Records, which if you already have access to Reading A to Z, you're able to print off templates. Here we also see PDFs of just a checklist for kindergarten all the way through. And so I'm going to focus on elementary. And so here are different things that you can check off to keep record. These are things that you can discuss with parents as well. And this will also help you make educational decisions with the parents or as a team in order to help the child. This is a section that gives you reading instructional strategies and interventions. And as I mentioned, there's a section for all the other areas that might affect a child. But this specifically helps you to just monitor and record how much time you're spending, if the accommodation or intervention or strategy was effective or not, and the remarks. And so this is good to keep in the child's folder so that the next teacher can see what has already been done, what hasn't worked, and so that they can see what could be tried in the future. So here in the Universal Screener information, which was revised in July 2021, we are going to see the major characteristics that a screener is going to need. And so this is another PDF that you're going to have access to on the Department of Education for the state of Indiana. And so here you see required components. And then on the right, they're going to give you possible screening tools. And so it's important to know that it's phonological awareness, phoneme awareness. Here we have Lexercise, which is a website that is also free. You can have students, parents, or teachers or clinicians work on it, and it gives you immediate information. The kids click through it. It's very quick and painless. Here we have the Mississippi Dyslexia Screener, which is also on Lexercise. And again, it is very easy to use. You can create an account. You can sign up for free. And it gives you the data that you need in order to create a learning plan for your student. So in summary, this is just a call for you as a Seventh-day Adventist teacher to do your best to be able to identify these children. And I know that you're doing your best, but now that you've been given more information, I'm not trying to add more to your plate. I'm just trying to give you more resources so that we can provide everything that the students that the Lord has given us, so that they can be successful, so that their parents can also help them to be successful, and so that the parents can have more information about how their child learns and better understand them as individuals and as students. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. I don't have all the information, but with the little that I do have, I'm more than happy to share. And I just hope that we can go out there and identify the kids that need the help that they need. Have a great afternoon.